So hopefully this audio comes out the way that I'm hoping it will. And thank you for joining once again. So we have been in a pseudo break. I've been involved in a lot of things that are going on around the city. Just trying to kind of plug in and get in tune with the movers and shakers basically are the people that are, actively involved in that part of the community. I've learned a lot while I've done that, and I'm actively seeking to continue to do that and kind of just learn some more. Like I said, I've been around here for 19 years, and I know a lot very surface level, but maybe not as much. Fully ingrained in, community activism type things. And not to say that that's necessarily what this platform is. This platform really is just to be informed, and just kind of be in the know of what's going on. Now, if there's a issue or something that we see that needs to be pressed, then I don't have a problem pressing, but in order to do that and be as educated as possible in the process, you have to actually be involved in those things. Anyways, there's a lot of different topics, a lot of different things going on. MPD had an officer that passed here recently, which was real unfortunate in a car wreck. And I think that there was another officer involved car wreck, as a matter of fact, that caused. And so there's been like a couple of different things that have happened, on the MPD side that kind of raise eyebrows, I guess, so to speak. But another big thing that has been talked about and is on a lot of people's minds, either through concerns or through opportunities, is the xAI effort to create a supercomputer facility in the Memphis area, specifically over at the Electrolux, the previous Electrolux factory site. And they've already began they've already began the training portion for that AI system. So that means all the hardware has been installed that's going to be installed, or, obviously things will be added, improved upon, so on and so forth. But they're pretty far along in this project. And from everything that I've heard on the Elon Musk side, he's pushing this thing. He wants Grok version 3, which is the AI's name, Grok. He wants a Grok version 3 to be ready to go by beginning of the year, and that's what, 2025 January. We're 4 months away from that. So we're looking at a lot of progress being made in the next 4 months just on, the setup. But the biggest problem that I guess has come across through all of this is the power consumption, the water consumption of that facility, which this is obviously going to, there's obviously going to be an inordinate amount of power used, because obviously in any data center, you're looking at large amounts of power to make all that equipment work. Okay. And, like I said, Elon Musk there's a guy who's a YouTuber, Lex Friedman, to Memphis I guess Elon was going through the process of testing and walking through the steps to do each individual task at that facility. So like running cable, doing some of the steps I guess probably developers do in the process of setting up and training the AI system. So, it's real interesting. We have Elon Musk coming to town. Now, obviously, he didn't, there was no major announcement that he was going to be in the Memphis area. And Lex Friedman, the only reason I even heard about that was because the Lex Friedman podcast had Elon Musk visit and they discussed what they did while they were at that facility. And Elon communicated his plan to go forward with Grok version 3. So I mean that's pretty big. Now on the Memphis side, as far as the community dynamic, a lot of people are concerned with the amount of power consumption that this facility will end up using. So MLG&W's CEO sat down and had a community event where he discussed the requested amount of power consumption that xAI has proposed, where it's at in the process now, the steps that have been taken up to this point, and then what the expectation is on when everything comes to fruition. I think that there's been a lot of thought put into the process. He clearly stated his intention and what his edict is, as far as making sure that the citizens of Memphis do not lose in bringing in power consumption and bringing a company to the area that may change the dynamics of what a normal day of usage would be. And I think that's what everybody's issue was. So, just from that simple point, there's already a facility there, Electrolux, and they weren't there that long. They built a brand new facility, and I believe that facility was actually paid for by Memphis taxpayers, or in subsidies and so on and so forth. Electrolux ended up packing up and hightailing it out of town for whatever reason. I don't know exactly what that was. The MLG&W CEO said that it was just a business decision and they left, but they left us holding the tab. So with xAI coming to town, this is actually an opportunity to recoup some of the money that was invested in that location. And obviously it has to go through all the regulatory requirements and meet certain standards before full approval is given. I know the request, or it's been communicated that the request has been sent to MLG&W, and we haven't heard back on, not to MLG&W, I'm sorry, to Tennessee Valley Authority. And we are waiting for the response from TVA on a yay or nay, whether or not that request will be met. And I imagine, for all intents and purposes, it'll come down the tube. It will be met. In the time being, there will be generators used to make sure that the power is at the expected levels. And but I know that that's not the long term. That's not the long term plan going forward. And then another major thing that we're looking at is the water consumption. Right now with the Memphis Aqueduct, initially drinking water is going to be used to cool the facility and the hardware inside the facility. And that's not going to be a viable option long term. There's a water treatment facility that's already in use currently in Memphis, where all of our wastewater goes to. It goes to a facility, is treated and dumped back into the Mississippi. That water that's dumped back into the Mississippi, although treated, obviously the contaminants taken out of it, and then the water released into the Mississippi, it only goes through a certain number or a certain level of treatment to be allowed to be released back into the river. In order for it to be at the grade that it needs to be to cool the supercomputer, it will have to go through additional treatment processes. And that's where the gray water facility comes in at. And that's also something else that they're looking for xAI to pay for. So, I mean, really, from face value, as long as, Memphis residents, because we won't be affected one way or the other. The location of this facility is way out on President's Island. It's not coming in. It's not going to be something that will affect us immediately. We're looking at the very odd times when you'll have extremely high power consumption and that facility is in place. And it sounded like from MLG&W's CEO that there are contracts in place with all facilities or all businesses here in Memphis, and especially high usage businesses, that if we are reaching peak consumption, that instead of putting out a notice to Memphis citizens and residents that power consumption needs to be reduced, those companies are put on notice and they have to reduce their power consumption by 80%. Now, I don't know what the contingencies are with xAI. So if xAI has supercomputer, the AI that brings a whole lot of different dynamics when you really think about it. Because, okay, xAI is running, and we're at peak consumption citywide. What effect does that have on the AI if you have to draw back by 80% during that period of time? So winter storms, you have winter thunderstorms where the infrastructure is stressed or lines are disconnected for one reason or the other. And next thing you know, you're using redundancies that have been built into the system, but normal routes have been taken out of that. And so how does that affect the supercomputer? Because that ultimately affects and so if they have generators, obviously they have a backup plan also. But when you're talking about AI in the Memphis area, you can go down a real rabbit hole, because if there is an AI that I'm not sure to what capacity it has control of outside influences, but it's something to think about. If it's, I hope that they have it contained enough to where it's used for the specific purposes that we would expect for it to be used, and it's not able to do anything outside that parameter or global usage in whatever we use AI for. It's pretty much everything in computing. So we'll have an AI supercomputer in Memphis, and I think that's a good thing. It gives jobs opportunities. We have a world-renowned, entrepreneur that is invested now in the city of Memphis. And I believe, and obviously the supercomputer is a major piece of his puzzle. So you want to keep the surrounding situation for that major piece. I don't want to say happy, but you want to keep that piece of the puzzle in as good condition as possible, so that piece of the puzzle could continue to serve the purposes that it was created for. So I think that there's a lot of things that we can, but I mean, and it's a feather in the administration's hat. We'll see how MLG&W handles this through the life of this project to see whether or not they follow through on all the things that they claim will happen. I know that the MLGNW CEO McGowan. Hold on one second. Let me just get this little piece because I'm talking around his name. MLGW CEO Doug McGowan. All right, so Mr. McGowan, Doug McGowan, he said a lot of things. He said all the right things, and he sounds like he's pretty adamant about where he stands on that particular thing. So I just want to go into this story a little bit, see the surrounding things that apply here to Memphis, and I think that I'm gonna keep on digging on this particular deal right here because it's a big thing, you know. Elon Musk is always doing something that's pushing the envelope, and to bring Memphis into the mix is a big deal. So we'll see how this whole endeavor benefits the city of Memphis, which I believe that it should. Obviously, they're using this area. Initially, the aqueduct is a benefit. The Mississippi River obviously is a benefit. They're building, they're assisting in building pieces of the infrastructure here in the Memphis area. They're adding money to the economy of Memphis, either through taxes, through payments to MLG&W. Doug McGowan said that he expects that their power bill on a monthly basis will be over $4 million. It was either $4 million or $7 million. And I'll put because there was the town hall meeting or the Q&A that was held by MLG&W this past Saturday, and that was August 10th. And a lot of good jewels were dropped. You know, a lot of good information was given on this particular project, and a Q&A was held to address the concerns of the people in the community so they could ask what they needed to ask. And there was one question that I thought was, it was funny initially, but when I thought about it, man, that thing makes too much sense. Cyber attacks and an attack on a supercomputer location because one, you have one of the richest people in the world involved with this deal. It's a major project. What concerns do we need to have about this facility being in the Memphis area? What type of unintended consequences can it bring to our community? Fire question. Now, Doug McGowan can't answer that question, but I know for a fact that there will be other people that may have a little bit more information on that particular thing, and I'd love to hear Elon Musk answer something to that effect because I think it's something we have to pay attention to. It shouldn't just necessarily be swept under the rug. So I want to look at a couple of the news stories that initially were brought up because of this project, and then maybe dip into some of the AI Q&A that was done this past Saturday. And then we'll follow up with this whole storyline as it moves forward. All right. So late July. Now, this thing has been, I'm talking about quick. We just heard about this probably in June, May time frame. It's July. The facility is already up, running, and training the AI. Okay. July 26th, xAI launches Memphis Supercomputer. Musk announced start of training for what he calls the world's most powerful AI training cluster at a new supercomputer facility in Memphis, Tennessee. The billionaire entrepreneur and CEO of multiple tech companies shared on X that the Memphis Supercluster began operations around 4:20 local time Monday. Now, that was Monday, August 5th. Musk's AI team, working with X and NVIDIA, launched the supercomputer clusters with 100,000 liquid-cooled GPUs. This setup, according to Musk, gives xAI a significant advantage in training the world's most powerful AI by every metric by December this year. But skeptics question if these claims will match reality, especially given Musk's history of making big, off-the-cuff remarks on social media. The startup of the massive AI training facility is a notable milestone for Memphis. Reports show that xAI's investment is the largest capital investment by a new company in the city's history. By far, I have no doubt. But the project has raised concerns among local residents and officials about its impact on the area's power grid and infrastructure. Doug McGowan, president of Memphis Light, Gas, and Water, said that xAI could use up to 150 megawatts of power at peak times. All right, training starts. This substantial power requirement has led to talks with TVA about the project's electricity demands and connection to the power system. TVA told the local news station TVA does not have a contract in place with xAI. We are working with xAI and our partners at MLGNW on the details of the proposal and the electricity demands needed. MLGNW has said that xAI moved into an existing building with already established utility services, but the extent of the company's power usage and potential effects on local utilities are still unclear. That's since been addressed and communicated. To address community concerns, MLGNW plans to host public forums in the coming days to provide more information about the project and its implications for the city. For now, Musk is adding to the power supply for the Memphis computer cluster by installing a fleet of 14 Voltra grid natural gas generators. This temporary measure aims to provide extra power while xAI works out an agreement with the local power utility. As training at the Memphis Supercluster gets underway, all eyes are on xAI and Musk's ambitious goal of developing the world's most powerful AI by the end of the year, given the competitive landscape in AI, with companies like OpenAI, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Anthropic, and Google in the mix. The potential success of Musk's project is a topic of significant interest. If such an AI model does emerge from xAI, it would undoubtedly be a development worth following closely. I'll tell you what, it is kind of amazing because I remember hearing back, I can't remember exactly who Elon was talking to. I think it was, it may have been Joe Rogan, it may have been somebody else, I'm not sure. But he was talking about being involved in the OpenAI. Yep. He was talking about being on the OpenAI board of directors when it very first began before Microsoft got involved, and how that entire endeavor fell through for him and he left the board. He started to talk about Grok. I remember seeing Grok released and integrated into X, formerly Twitter, and how it has kind of evolved. I've seen some of the different promotional utilization efforts on X for Grok in real world scenarios. It's got a cool name, you know what I mean? Like Grok, just like Guardians of the Galaxy. And now to see that, I tell you what, when Elon gets obviously a goal in mind. He's a dog after it because he expressed to me, he expressed disappointment in not being a part of the open AI and concern because he felt like open AI would be used for nefarious purposes or could end up being more of a negative than a positive, and also being the largest AI tool. Shortly after that, obviously Grok was introduced, or it may have not have been after that, but from my perspective, I was made aware of Grok after that. And now by the end of 2024, the goal is to be the largest AI supercomputer in the world. That right there by itself is absolutely amazing. I mean, the facility is huge that they're using, and it's nothing but for this supercomputer. I'd love to see the facility, to see what's on the inside, see how it's set up. I think it's something like over 1 million square feet. Hold on. Electrolux Memphis. I don't even know why we're still. Let's see. All right, so 785,000 square foot facility. Okay. Yeah. They said that there's a coal, is it a coal plant? There's another plant that does produce power also that's close to that. And it doesn't really give us anything else about that facility per se. But just so we can kind of take a look. All right, so it's obviously closed. Let's just look at a street view. And so this is going to be the power substation here that's close to the facility. I believe that's the facility there, if you can see it. That will be the facility there. And once upon a time, we used to have people there. So we have the Electrolux old facility. All right. Let's come out of this. So if you come down and it's by T.O. Fuller State Park, Westwood area. All right. There's a couple different ways to get there, but the most popular way is if you're coming around on 50, as if you're going over to the 55 bridge, the old drip bridge. You'll get off on Mallory. All right. And you're coming around on Riverport Road. And so obviously you'll come out quite a good ways. And you'll continue to swing around, and this is going to be the area that you'll ultimately end up being in. You're right there, like we said, on the Mississippi River for the most part. Obviously, there's a little bit of a gap between the facility and the actual, and the river itself. But, it kind of swings around, and that's where it will be. So it definitely has, access to a lot of water cooling. And I'm not sure exactly where they'll be building the gray water facility, but I know that it's supposed to be in this same vicinity. So it's a good spot. I mean, it's a good spot. It's out of the way. It won't affect Memphis at all, other than being on our power grid for the most part. And so, I mean, yeah, I think that it is a good addition to the economy of Memphis. Point blank simple. $785,000 square feet. That's a big deal. That's a lot of room. I'd love to see what the inside of that looks like. All right. So now, obviously, with everything that's, brought to the table, there's going to be people that are going to be for it. There's going to be people that are going to be against it, right? So there's been environmental groups that are warning that xAI's massive power could threaten residential electricity supply and overburden. And I don't think I'm not 100% sure if that they're totally against it. You have to be aware and cognizant of all the things that are affected when you bring large players into your environment. It would be irresponsible if we don't have an idea for what the effects would be bringing in a company with a supercomputer that needs to be cooled with massive amount of resources and needs to be powered with massive amount of resources. As a community, it's our responsibility to question that, get answers, and then make sure that the people that are directly involved with that particular project are doing what they say they'll do. It's our responsibility. So it looks like, with these environmental groups, I mean, really, that's what they're supposed to do. That's what they're created for. I wouldn't expect anything else other than for them to be out in front saying, hey, what about this? So let's see what they say. A group of Memphis residents has written to local authorities expressing concern about plans to build the world's largest supercomputer for xAI's startup. Announced in June, the Gigafactory of Compute will provide the startup with its own dedicated supercomputer to run its AI training to reduce its reliance on X and Tesla servers. However, nonprofit group of local residents called the Southern Environmental Law Center is concerned with the planned supercomputer facility, calling the proposed site harmful. In a letter to Tennessee Valley Authority, the state's grid operator, the group is worried the company lacks the grid infrastructure and power to xAI services while maintaining electricity services for the community. The group argues that xAI facility is already demanding 150 megawatts of power by the end of 2024, which could instead power 100,000 homes. Now, I mean, and of course it could, I guess, power 100,000 homes, but we have to have the money to build those 100,000 homes. There has to be people that have the money to be able to purchase the 100,000 homes. And so how do you do that? You add more money to the economy. There's always going to be people that are going to be pro-business and want to bring more people in or more businesses in. So money's added to the economy. More people have money in their pockets. Hopefully it'll be distributed one way or the other to us sitting in our houses doing whatever it is we do. There'll be another contingency of people that are looking at environmental concerns, looking at the impacts of having these businesses here in our community and how it's going to affect or what else we could be doing with that same amount of resources. There has to be a balance. I think that it is good to police what's going on. I don't believe that it should be done at the expense of bringing in new business. But you can't run rampant or, gunshot from the hip with bringing in new businesses and then just allowing them to do whatever they want in our community. So there has to be some kind of juggle. There has to be a healthy balance involved there, and there has to be a stopgap also. So if whomever is coming in and is doing something that we didn't agree to from the very beginning, we have to have a voice loud enough. We have to have, the conscience, or our effect needs to be enough to be able to get that thing to stop one way or the other. And so making sure we have all those different things in place, I think that, it'll be a winning formula for us at the end of the day. So the letter cites an October 2023 notice filed by TVA that it identified a reliability concern in the Memphis area grid, some nine months before xAI announced intentions to set up shop in the city. They cited the example of Winter Storm Elliott, which left thousands without power as TVA's Memphis gas plants failed to fire. Now, that was addressed by Doug McGowan, and he was saying that the infrastructure, the power from TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, comes in certain spots in the city, and it's a number of certain spots. During winter storm events, oftentimes the delivery of that power coming from TVA is severed. And so redundancies have to be used, which obviously lowers the overall amount of power available. And so he did say that a lot of time, money, and effort has been put into creating more reliable delivery systems to Memphis from wherever else it's coming from, TVA or otherwise. And then also, it was explained that companies that come to the Memphis area in the event of situations like winter storms are required contractually to lower their overall amount of power consumption. I'm glad that it was addressed. It needed to be addressed. Now it's about implementation and follow through. So it cannot reasonably be disputed that xAI will require TVA to generate additional electricity and add capacity to the system. TVA must disclose how it proposes to provide power to xAI, analyze alternatives before committing to provide power to xAI. The group also urges that MLG&W has not obtained proper approvals from its board or the City Council for infrastructure investments relating to serving xAI. That was something else that was addressed. All the improvements will not be on the Memphis taxpayer dime. It will be done through xAI, the company. They also raised questions about whether MLG&W ratepayers will be subsidizing millions of dollars in infrastructure investments for xAI. Overcommitting to industrial load, as MLG&W and xAI have requested, could have serious and even life-threatening consequences for residents and customers in Memphis. xAI's proposed supercomputer will be housed in a 750,000 square foot site in the south of the city, which will house hundreds of thousands of NVIDIA GPUs. Musk himself was in Memphis recently to inspect the work being conducted on xAI hardware cluster. And so here he is right here. All right. Yeah. I think it's a good thing. I think that we can, work out the details. The biggest thing is for me, and I think that the biggest thing should be for everybody, the people that do this on a regular basis, i.e. the environmental groups and the watchdogs, keep an eye on what's going on. through whatever means you normally do that type of thing for. And if they aren't following through on what's been said or what's to be expected, then we need to do something about it. We don't need to turn a blind eye. Action needs to be taken. I think it should be explicitly said what action will be taken if drinking water is continued to be used as cooling the supercomputer. If 150 megawatts aren't used as a peak reference, it's continually used. Or if natural gas generators cause harm to the environment and are continuously used. We need the money, but we don't need to do this at the expense of our health, the environmental comfort going on around us, or environmental damage at the expense of the Memphis aquifer or the expense of Memphis residents not having power when necessary. So it should be interesting to see how this kind of unfolds. Next, we will jump into a little bit of video on what Doug McGowan actually said about the xAI project. And obviously we'll get back into other topics as well. I just think it's a great thing to see this project moving forward, and I'm kind of excited to see how it's all going to unfold and what comes from it. Okay.